Maria Izquierdo was a Mexican painter and muralist. She was the first Mexican woman to exhibit in the U.S. and enjoyed a very successful international career, and held her own among her more well-known male peers like Diego Rivera, Jose Orozco, and David Siqueiros. Maria Izquierdo was one of a handful of muralists who attempted to get the prestigious commission to paint a cycle of murals in the Palacio del Departamento del Distrito Federal. Rivera, Orozco, and Siqueiros were also in the running. And instead of just making an honest bid for this commission, these three male artists badmouthed Izquierdo's incredible talents and abilities, and the three eventually won the mural commission. Disappointed over the loss, Izquierdo rebuked their underhanded campaign against her. It is a crime to be born a woman and have talent. Katsushika Oi worked in the Baijinga tradition of Japanese art, painting beautiful women. She also painted portraits of sumo wrestlers, kabuki actors, and landscapes. Oi was already an accomplished painter by the time she married. After just 3 years of marriage, Oi divorced her painter husband, calling him a comically poor artist. She immediately moved in with her famous artist father and continued to excel with her Baijinga painting. Even her father admitted Oi's Baijinga work was far better than his own. These two lived a vagabond life, moving from town to town and house to house. Concerned only with making art, Oi was described by her contemporaries as a spiritual searcher who was eccentric and kind. Fede Galizia was a successful Italian Renaissance portrait painter, and although very few art history books mention it, Galizia was also a pioneer of the still life painting. In fact, one of her works, painted in 1602, is said to be the first dated still life by an Italian artist. Galizia's trailblazing work did not receive any recognition by art historians and academics until the 1960s, a few hundred years after her death. Mary T. Smith was the third of 13 children born to Mississippi sharecroppers. Deaf from an early age, she began to draw as a refuge from the isolation caused by her hearing loss. Smith's art combines elements of West African ceremonial masks with her own Christian spirituality. She used everyday materials like plywood, corrugated tin, and other recycled parts of her home and garden to create her works. Smith transformed her home and garden into an art environment that's been called a form of spiritual autobiography. One of her favorite themes to paint were portraits of family and friends with upraised arms, a gesture associated with ecstasy or spiritual enlightenment. Anna Dorothea Terbusch was a prominent court painter from King of Prussia who flourished in the mid-18th century. While she enjoyed success early on in her life, Terbusch gave up her career to marry and help her husband manage his business. After 20 years, she left him to resume her painting career. Among her patrons was Catherine the Great of Russia, who commissioned Terbusch to paint the portraits of several members of the Prussian royal family. Terbusch went to Paris in the 1760s and exhibited her work in the Académie Royale des Peintures et des Sculptures Paris. She was one of the few women artists elected to the Académie Royale, but was ultimately turned down because they judged her paintings to be too good to have been done by a woman. The women painters of Midila have been painting on the mud walls of their family homes for centuries. These folk artists, who live in the Indian subcontinent, cover the interior and exterior walls of their homes with vibrant images of plants, animals, humans, and religious symbols. Their paintings celebrate marriages, birthdays, and religious ceremonies. In the 1960s, The women painters of Midila started putting some of their paintings onto paper and canvas, and suddenly their rich and personal artwork became known to the outside world. Lyubov Popova was a radical multimedia artist. She was also a passionate communist who took part in the 1917 Russian Revolution. She worked at a time when women were largely ignored. As a female revolutionary and pioneer of Cubo-futurism, she received little respect from the party or art institutions, but that didn't stop Popova from continuing to push forward with her artwork. Blending Cubism and Italian futurist, she created something called painterly architectonics. This work embraced her revolutionary politics and post-capitalist ideas.